It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, March 11th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that hopes the Flyers can put a better game together against the Ottawa Senators.
You never know.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, and of course here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, which means we always check in with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, and they're at a pivotal moment in the season. So we are going to dig into that, plus where the new guys fit in, and so much more. Meanwhile, the Flyers have 3 games left in this homestand, starting tonight against the Ottawa Senators. Then they face the Tampa Bay Lightning and Carolina Hurricanes, 2 very tough teams. So, Ottawa is also a good team,
They are.
so this week is going to be a very challenging week for the Flyers.
Yeah, they have to ramp it up. They have to kind of look within, and they're going to have to play a lot better. I mean, they all play a little differently. Uh, I think Brady Tkachuk's probably playing mad because when Josh Norris got traded, that was one of his
Yeah.
worries. So
Oh man,
that's
he cried on
yeah,
TV,
yeah,
and
he
like
was
that.
emotional.
Yeah, it
So that
was
was
a
one of his
big
guys.
deal.
So he's going to be annoyed. If there's no Hathaway, I mean, having Nick Seeler out there doesn't mean Brady Tkachuk's going to fight. So Brady
Or
Tkachuk will.
Delorier, for that matter.
Oh, or Delorier too. Yeah, I don't because I'm Sealer. It's like I don't know if he's going to be hurt or not. Like you said, I don't know
Right.
if he'll be in or not. But yeah, the big thing with Kachuk is you just don't know who he's going to aggravate and how many penalties he's going to draw. And so everybody's fair game when he's on the ice, and you have to sort of account for that. And you got to keep your head up, and you really can't play any kind of lackadaisical hockey with him around.
Yeah, and kind of looking a little further into the future there, much like we had that weird series with the Winnipeg Jets, where
Yeah,
our only games against them were a few days apart. Same thing with the Tampa Bay Lightning. That is the first game on the road trip that's coming up that will also be challenging with the Washington Capitals, Dallas Stars, and Chicago Blackhawks. So Flyers have a tough road towards the end of the season, and playoffs aside, I think they have to have a good showing in games like these,
you
right?
do. And they're going to be playing against some bigger teams. They're going to be playing against bigger defensemen. So they have to expect that these games, most of them will be physical, even more physical than what they've been facing lately, a lot more physical than Seattle, as an example. So, yeah, I mean, you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, it's hard not to look back a little bit when you wanna look ahead like
Hmm.
this to what the Flyers have to do, but, we're seeing the former Flyers in their new homes,
Hmm.
and, we see Frost and Farabee are really starting to establish themselves in Calgary, and Scott Laughton is just getting used to things in
Yeah.
Toronto right now. You can see the social media posts about it, but, yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge to adjust to not having those guys around.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, Joel Farabee, he scored a late goal recently and an important one, may have been an overtime goal, and was asked about being out there in an important time of the game. And he said he used to be out there in important times of the game before the coach who's there now in Philly. He's pretty much said it like that. And he's right. I mean, every year, John diminished those kinds of things. Those are the little things that sometimes, you don't pick up on right away. Like even when you cover the team, you kind of forget. But I remember we had, and I'll use this old phrase, harkened back to the time where when Farabee was used like a lot on the top power play pre-Torts, he was a different player. So I think they're going to try and get those attributes back from him. So yeah.
All right, the Ottawa Senators are still in the race in the East. Their second wild card as of last night prior to their game against Detroit. That game is not over by the time we are recording,
Right.
but they are a point behind Columbus with 1 game in hand. And it's been an interesting recent run for Ottawa because they did lose a few games, then won a few games. Like
Yeah.
they've been a little inconsistent, but they're hanging in there and they're really hoping the moves they made at the trade deadline are going to put them over the top to keep them in the hunt, right?
Yeah, I think the Fabian Zetterlund one was a last minute sneaky good one because it just adds that little extra offense that they may need at times.
Right.
Can't always rely on Stutzla, and you lost Norris, who, when he is healthy, is one of their better offensive play drivers. So, and Cousins, yeah, I know he got an assist in his first game, but I don't know how much offense. He's certainly not going to bring the same offense as Norris. So this is a good way to sort of replenish that, but also get a guy who's probably hungry, right? He's been in San Jose and he knew he wasn't going to have a chance at the playoffs, and now he does.
Right, and I just think we should clarify, Nick Cousins is on IR
Dylan,
for I know, we're talking about Dylan Cousins
yeah,
here, and you're right, he did have his first game with his new team in Ottawa and did get that assist, in the Senators' overtime win versus the New York Rangers. Zetterlund had not checked in yet. He will have his first game with Ottawa against Detroit
yeah,
last night. So, right now, their morning skate for that game, he was gonna slot in on the 4th line for now, and then I'm sure they'll make
yeah.
adjustments
They'll make
and figure
adjustments.
things out, as it progresses. So I'm not sure where he's gonna slot in the game against the Flyers. Cousins, Dylan Cousins is the 2C for the Senators right now, slotting in behind Stützle, who's their first line center, and I think that checks out with where he should be on that squad.
Yeah, I think so. And they have good push from the blue line. Like, we have to remember, they have some really
Right.
good mobile offensive defensemen who can really fire the puck. And so that's something where they didn't see a lot of that recently, but now they're going to start seeing it more on with these new teams that they're facing.
Right, and in that game against the Rangers recently, Stützle extended a point streak to 14 games. He's had 5 goals and 15 assists in that 14 game streak. That is a pretty solid scoring streak for him.
He really, yeah, he's a guy that, I guess, because he's in Ottawa, doesn't get talked about enough, like being pretty much
Yeah.
a potential superstar, and he's really on the cusp of that. And so he's a guy, yes, when he's out there, you really have to watch out for him because he is a big body, he has speed, but his stick and puck control is just tremendous.
Right, and he's playing on that line with Giroux and Kachuk.
Right.
That is just a tremendous
That's a
line.
hard line because they have defense, they have grit, they get in front of the net with Kachuk. You got great passing still with Giroux. Like, they have it all. That line it's a great line.
And 2 guys who are good at faceoffs on that line, so it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter, right?
What I also find interesting, because I think maybe some people didn't fully appreciate Jake Sanderson in the Four Nations, but
Right.
Jake Sanderson, when you see him, in person, holy cow, that kid is good, and he's a kid.
Yes. Yes, he very much impressed me at Four
Yeah,
Nations, and I got to ask him a question or 2, in the media availability while I was up there, and just the fact that he was added late, he jumped in there and, did what was asked of him,
smart
and
kid, Jeff's
so
kid.
smart,
You could tell
really
he from a
thoughtful,
hockey
really
family.
thoughtful.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's impressive.
Yeah, very, very impressive for sure. And, you look at this Ottawa team, which, I mentioned faceoffs and those 2 guys
Yes,
on their top line that are very good at it, 52.8% as a team, 4th in the NHL. That's a huge factor for them.
it is. Going back to last game, we had a thought that Nico Hischier was probably going to dominate in the circle, and boy, did he. He was something like 70 something percent.
Right.
They can't really let that happen again, but then,
They
while I
may not have
say
a choice, but
that's the problem, while I say that, they may not have a way of stopping it either.
yeah, so I think defensively, the Flyers are gonna have to focus on those set plays and make
Right.
sure that the Senators can't execute on them off the faceoff, especially on defensive zone faceoffs.
Yeah, even Sean Couturier has been having trouble with defensive zone faceoffs lately, and again, this goes back to everything we've ever talked about with him. But in this game, he's going to be really important for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as goaltending goes, Ullmark is playing against Detroit, so we're going to get Anton Forsberg in net in our game, and I don't think it matters that much in the grand scheme of things, but very different goaltender for sure.
Very different. I definitely have a bias towards Anton Forsberg. I always think if he's in the net, he's eminently beatable. I felt like that for most of his career. He's had some, good years, don't get me wrong, but he's just one of those guys that can be inconsistent. And I think you can take advantage of Anton Forsberg. I do. So will they? I don't know. I think one of the problems of the last game for the Flyers was they didn't really have much traffic in front of the net. They may have produced some shots, but they weren't really following up those shots. They're going to have to do that now.
I think they should put Fedotov in this game
I
because
do too.
I think if you look at the week as a whole, I think you want Urson in against the Lightning and
Yes.
against the Canes. So put Fedotov in this game.
Yep. I agree, but I'm gonna just say the coach seems dead set against doing something like that because that would be different than what he outlined as the schedule
Yeah.
a week or 2 weeks ago. So we'll see. It would be a nice change if they did it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they'll split the difference and put in Fedotov against the Lightning and then have Urson play the Sens and the Canes. But
Maybe.
to be determined on that front. It's going to be a tough game. It'll be a fun game,
Oh
though,
yeah.
I think. And I'm very much looking forward to that. It is Tuesday, and it is, of course, Phantoms Tuesday around here. And we're going to get into everything going on in Lehigh Valley coming up next.
Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef prepared, dietitian approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab and go snacks that keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they're packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started with factormeals.com/lockedon NHL 50 off and use code lockedon NHL 50 off to get 50% off of your first box plus free shipping. That's code lockedon NHL 50 off at factormeals.com/lockedon NHL 50 off to get 50% off free shipping on your first box.
On tomorrow's show, we will, of course, recap that game against the Ottawa Senators. Plus, we're going to dig into, in a little bit more detail, the Flyers' plan for the rest of the season and things that they need to consider when they're setting lineups and looking ahead toward free agency and what's going on with their prospects as well.
I
So,
think we need to set
excited.
a plan on how we are attempting to watch them for the rest of the year.
Well, there is that, but like I said, there's a lot of important things to look out for, and we're gonna talk about them, coming up on tomorrow's show. Plus, we're gonna answer your mailbag questions, so get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. You can send us a message on any of our socials or comment on our YouTube channel. We already have some really great trade deadline related questions, and we wanna add your questions to the mix as well. The Lehigh Valley Phantoms had a split decision weekend against the Charlotte Checkers down in North Carolina, where they lost the first game of the two 4-1 and then won the second game 3-2. So ending on a good note, which is rare and fun for us to take a look at it, especially because it was 2 days in a row. So for them
Right.
to win the second half of a back to back, I think is a big deal for them.
It is. It also seemed a tale of two different goaltenders.
Very much so, and that is definitely one of the bigger things, for the Phantoms, which we are going to get into here. I did wanna do a little reset about them and the playoffs because we're getting closer and
Right.
closer. There's only 14 games remaining in the AHL season for the Phantoms. They and two other teams are now tied for the most games played this
Oh my
season
God.
in the AHL. It's bizarro. So
Are
a
they going to
lot
be
of
off for a week while everybody decides how the season ends?
could be, but for 2 weeks in a row, they have 2 games instead of
Right.
3. So
That helps.
other teams are going to have a chance to catch up. They're still in 6th place in the division, and that puts them in a playoff position because in the AHL, almost everybody makes the playoffs.
Right.
So they have 23 teams will make the playoffs there with 5 rounds, which is absolutely
It's
crazy.
insane.
So the Atlantic Division gets top 6 finishers will make the playoffs, and the 6th place finisher will face the 3rd place finisher in the division in the first round of the playoffs. The Phantoms are 10 points ahead of Hartford, who's in 7th place right now. So I think they're going to be okay here.
Right. I agree. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, so right now it's very hard to tell who they might face in that first round just because there's 3 or maybe 4 teams hovering around that 3 slot.
Yeah.
Right now, if it's Wilkes-Barre Scranton, that's gonna be trouble. If
That's
it's
not great.
Providence or Charlotte, they have a slightly better chance
Absolutely.
here.
There's no question about that.
Yeah, so we're gonna keep track of where these other teams are and how the Phantoms finish out. Now, the biggest story from this past week in Phantoms land was the return of Aleksei Kolosov to the Phantoms, which happened around the trade deadline. And they said he was actually going to play, which in fact he did in that second game
Right.
that the Phantoms won, which is very important there. He had 21 saves on 23 shots. So not like the busiest game ever, but not nothing as far as AHL games go.
No, but he gives them the best chance of winning. I think we all know that. We all knew that when he
Yes.
wasn't playing. So now that he's playing, yeah, that's good for the Phantoms.
Yeah, so he hadn't played since January 29th for the
Crazy.
Phantoms. It was even earlier for the Flyers before that in January. So, having over a month off between games here. And the fact that I think he played pretty solid,
Hmm.
given that, is a very good sign for me. I would say that, you look at his 8 games played overall at the AHL level right now. He's got a 3.39 goals against average and an 878 save percentage. I would attribute at least a portion of those lower numbers to his lack of playing time.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he could do better than that. Although, if I just went by the numbers, but I am agreeing with you. But if I went just by the numbers organizationally, these are the numbers we're seeing in the NHL too.
Correct. So it's where we're at with Urson to some degree. I
Yeah,
mean, so at least in recent
right.
games. So yeah, goaltending is definitely an issue in the Flyers organization right now. I will say, as far as his gameplay in that win against Charlotte, I would say the first goal was not entirely on him, and he made some pretty good saves over the course of the game that were important. He did make a mistake on the Checkers' second goal where he put a rebound in a very good spot for Jesse Puljujarvi to just pot it very
Yeah, he's a guy you
easily.
can't do that with.
Right, and so I think it was a simple mistake and an honest mistake, but a mistake you can learn from.
Right.
And ultimately they won the game and he made some key saves late anyway that kept them in it. So he did make up for it to some degree following that because, this was a goal near the very beginning of the third period and they hadn't really gotten their rhythm yet in terms of the flow of play. But, that's why you got to be ready right when the puck drops.
Right. Yeah. And this is why he needs to play a lot down the stretch here because he is a prospect goalie. He just doesn't have a
Right.
big resume.
Right. So I think, as long as they keep letting him play, and I would almost suggest that he play both games for the Phantoms coming up this
I would
week
do
because
that.
they're not back to back. There's a day rest
Right.
in between. So we'll see what
I mean,
happens
Cal
with that.
Peterson's
But
soon to be gone. He's played a
right,
lot in his career. They need to, work to the future here on this.
exactly. So beyond that, now they have a couple of new guys that they're going to have to work in. Neither of them played this week because in the AHL it takes a little longer to
It does.
get the guys there. And so, not sure where they're going to slot in to the lineup. I would say that we'll probably see Gorbenkin in a higher position in the lineup
Yeah, I think on
for
that team,
sure.
you could put him second or third line for sure.
Yeah, so we'll see how that affects things. My guess is that Denoye is going to get scratched in lieu of him to start
Probably.
out. But
That's a good
I
call.
think, yeah, I think that's the right move to do it because Tuamala is still hurt. Now, if
Right.
he comes back this week, that's yet another spot that's not really available to Denoye, who's just done nothing this
Right.
season.
He's just
So,
really been disappointing. Yeah, and and Smith, it really doesn't matter what team he's on. He's a fourth liner. Like he's just a
right.
fourth, like that's where he plays.
Exactly. So I think the combination of new guys coming in and with the guys that are currently as of what we know now, the guys that are currently up with the Flyers like Andre Abels and Lixell, there is some opportunity here and we're
Hmm.
going to have to get more scoring from different guys on the
Yeah,
Phantoms
like J.R.
because
Avon has to still continue. Gaucher's been real
yes.
good, like you pointed out. He's picked it up, and Richard's real good. But some of these other guys, they have to pick it up.
Right, and so I would say that at least for now, the way it stands, Gaucher and Anthony Richard are 2 top guys that are gonna have to continue to be
Correct.
successful. We're gonna talk more about them and, what this new look for the Phantoms will be and what it should be coming up next. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, and each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel full longer. Personally, I like the no shells variety. It's perfect for grab and go. I have them at my desk while I'm working and recently I had some friends over for a movie night. We didn't have popcorn. We had Wonderful Pistachios instead, passed around a variety of flavors, but everybody really loved the chili roasted no shells and the sea salt and vinegar no shells as well. So delicious and healthy too. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So, with the new look for the Phantoms, again, with the new guys and with some of the other guys up with the Flyers right now, we talked about where they should get scoring from in this push to maintain their position and maybe even get themselves into a better position in the playoff race here. We talked about Jacob Gaucher. He scored his 20th goal of the year on Sunday, and he made an excellent extra effort in the middle of traffic to get a backhand past the Charlotte goalie. He's really picking up steam as far as his smarts out there, and that is good to see.
Yeah, I mean, the hockey IQ part is a big part because that's something where when you go to the next level, you bring that with you. And so, yeah, decision making and that are just as important as like talent because you could have all the talent in the world, but if you're thinking about things or your decision making is not fast, that's where you could hone those things down in the AHL.
Exactly, and he now leads the Phantoms in goals this season, which is good because you want a developing prospect in
Yep.
that slot on your team there. We all know what Anthony Richard is capable of. We've seen him with the Flyers, and
Yes.
he continued that. His game on Sunday was a lot of fun. He scored the game-winning goal with about 30 seconds left in the game on a power play, no less. It was a rocket of a shot, and he got into a fight earlier in the game, so it was like he was an assist short of the Gordie Howe,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
but it
that's
was
good.
fun.
Good game.
Yeah, and, Brendan Furry is continuing his
Yeah, I
late season
noticed.
surge that he did last year. We talked about this last week. He had
Hmm.
a breakaway that was gorgeous in the game on Sunday as well. And Zayd Wisdom again continues
We're not
to
allowed to talk about
find success.
Zayd Wisdom here. You know that. We can't, you know what happens. The chatterbox starts building with comments if we do.
Well, listen, he had 3 points in 49 games last season.
Yeah.
This year, he has 25 points in
Yeah, and we've
54 games.
pointed out his improvement, and it's nice to
Yep.
see.
Give him that AHL contract,
Yep.
Phantoms. And
Yep.
then we've also talked about Helge Grans, and similar to Zayd Wisdom, he had 1 goal last season. And we know he is not an offensive defenseman, right?
No,
But he does take his shots when he
he
gets
does.
them. And he has 7 goals this season. And again, it's not a ton of goals, but that he's got more than double his points already from last season in 3 fewer games.
I
And
mean,
that's just progress, and that's what we wanna see.
right. So the dilemma here is he could score more than Egor Zamula. He can. And
Probably, I
and
think.
but he's never going to be given that chance. That's it. That's my statement.
Well, uh, I would hope that he would be given that chance.
I
If
know.
if Danny Briere is a man of his word, he will get that chance. But, again, that's something we're gonna talk more about on tomorrow's show in
For
the
sure.
plan for the rest of the season there. But, yeah, it's just really interesting, like, where the Phantoms are at because I would say a month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks ago, we were very, very down on
We
this
were.
team, and I think with good reason,
Mhm.
right? But there have been these little nuggets of good prospect development, good team play to a large degree that have it hasn't put them over the edge to make them a better than good team, but there are these little nuggets of good that are happening, and if they can put it together to make a nice run at the end of the season, bolstered by maybe some of the new guys, again, we don't know what they're gonna add to the mix here. I think they could turn it around and find, some positives to end this season on in a really important way.
Yeah, I think they can find positives. For me, from a personal standpoint, they built a lot of goodwill. A lot of that goodwill could go out the window if they're facing Scranton first round, though, because then all of a
Yes,
sudden
that is for sure.
I gotta be honest about that.
No, well, I will be the first one to admit that if that's who they're facing. For sure. We have harped on, their special teams all season. Not a lot of data to work with from this past week because they only had 2 penalty kills all
Yeah,
weekend and they killed one of them. They had only 1 chance on Saturday. They had 4 chances on Sunday, but the one that they really needed it, they came through on and scored that 30 seconds left goal,
that's
to
good.
win it. Yeah, I mean, Charlotte makes a huge mistake taking a penalty with, 2 minutes left in the game, and the
And
Phantoms
you made him pay.
capitalized on it and won,
Yeah, you
and
gotta
that's
make
what
him
we
pay.
ask of them.
Yep.
So, I do think the potential is there for them to make this season a lot more successful, and that you need a successful AHL team in order to support your NHL team, and we say this again and again, and it's not just about developing prospects. And that's I would say 65% of what they need to do is develop the prospects, but that other 35% is creating a winning culture
Mhm.
that allows these prospects to be in a thriving environment and gain confidence. That's what we need.
Yeah, you need some continuity so when guys go up, they, have that confidence and everything else to succeed. So I agree.
Yeah. So, like I said, this upcoming week, there are only 2 games because they have so many games ahead of many of the other
They
teams
could
in the
play an
league.
extra round of golf in this nice weather.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins as the team you don't want them to face. Well, guess who they're facing in both of these
Yeah,
games, Russ?
it's a
Is
little preview.
Friday and Sunday. Now, the Phantoms will be at home, so there is that.
That's good.
But, yeah, 2 tough games against Wilkes-Barre Scranton, and I think, having to face them when you're trying to integrate the new players is gonna be a challenge, but they're gonna have to face it, and I think this is where the rubber meets the road for Ian LaPerriere. And like, can you coach this team at this juncture?
Yeah, show us. If you win both, I mean, you have better goaltending now, so there's no, that's been taken off the table as if that was an excuse. So, yeah, show us.
Absolutely. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow to discuss Flyers versus Senators, the plan for the rest of the season, and dip into our mailbag. You can send in your questions or Flyers thoughts to any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology. Same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. It brings you daily league-wide stories that matter with local coverage you love from Locked On. I'm on the Friday show there every single week. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.